Another announcement, sort of, I mean, it is an announcement, but we're going to, a week from today, we had a wonderful Mahapajapati ceremony on Tuesday, and we're going to do a full moon ceremony here on Thursday. And a simplified version, so it may be something that we could maybe do quarterly. It's a really beautiful enactment of our devotion to Bodhisattva vows. And we'll send that out in the newsletter and send out the script too, so to speak, so everybody can have it with you. So,
Chris, can I also make an announcement? Ellen and I, at least so far, are planning on meeting to discuss Susan Moon's Alive Until You're Dead. It's an amazing book, great stories, and if you are interested, my phone number will be corrected in the next newsletter. So, but please feel free to call me, and we'll come up with a time, and I'd love to have as many people as possible to join us.
and we're also going to be sending out information about Dawn training, so you just keep looking at the newsletters. We'll make announcements, but the newsletters that's the main conduit for communication, and an almost website transformation. You'll see. Stay tuned. Okay, Eightfold Path. As I said at the beginning of Zazen, today we're focusing on what's traditionally known as right concentration. It's the seventh of the Eightfold Path, but of course they're all interconnected. This person who I don't know, her name is Hoko Carnegus, and she's in Okamura's lineage. Calls it right mindfulness. And I think she does an amazing job of shocking, there are things I didn't know. I love learning things, and I hope you do too. And so I'm going to do the best I can with her essay, which is really chock full of wonderful taking apart and clarifying mindfulness as it's now come forward in the West, which is of course because we're in the West, has also become commodified and commercialized, and I have no doubt that it's helping people, but it's also really important as practitioners is to not lose the depth and the heart of this practice. Otherwise it's just one more thing. And she also, Hoko takes apart the difference between the Pali understanding of mindfulness, how it came forth in the early Buddhist teachings, and Mahayana and Dogen. Anyway, I think it's fascinating. Maybe you will too. Should I pay attention to those little dings happening? We're okay. Okay. Mindfulness has undergone a long and winding journey since the time of Shakyamuni, when it was aimed at freeing one from the grip of craving and aversion, to the time of Dogen, when it became a means of experiencing the one reality, to the modern West, where it's become a popular self-help technique. How did we get here? What do we lose when we take mindfulness out of context? What is the role of mindfulness in Soto Zen, which is this tradition, and how can we effectively practice with it in our daily lives? She got my attention. She have yours? I think these are great questions. So she starts with the four foundations, the Satipatthana Sutra. We studied the Satipatthana Sutra some years ago, and I'm pretty sure we did it when Chelsea was Shuso. Chelsea was the first Shuso. And because Chelsea does a lot with mindfulness in the schools as well as other people, to create a foundation. And we need to go back and do that sutra again, and we will. Our Buddha, Shakyamuni, said to his disciples, There are 4 foundations of mindfulness on which people should depend. These 4 foundations of mindfulness refer to contemplating the body as impure. Sometimes it's called contemplating the body in the body, which I, again, like body. It starts with body. Body. Don't skip this body. Contemplating sensations as suffering, sensations in the body. Contemplating mind as impermanent. What is this thing we call mind? And contemplating phenomena as non-substantial. Everything is empty of any inherent self-existence. These teachings were designed to disenchant early Buddhist practitioners from the phenomenal world and to help them loosen the grip of craving and aversion. I've told this story before, but because I've had the gift of being able to travel in Theravada in Sri Lanka and Myanmar and to visit ancient sites, one of the ones that most stuck out for me in an ancient monastic site was it was a place where you peed because it was men and it was for men, and it was on the ground and it had carvings of things of the world, which actually I thought were quite beautiful, but the whole point is that you pissed on it. I mean, what a really interesting. I still am like, I think I understood what that was. But this is what A.A. Dogen said. Dogen went on to explain that he perceived the four foundations in a whole new way. I haven't heard this list. I'm sure I could find it, although it's right here. A.A. also have 4 foundations of mindfulness. Contemplating, we'll come back to this, contemplating the body as a skin bag. I somehow love calling this body a skin bag. Somehow it feels really, I mean, he probably didn't mean it to be funny, but I actually find it funny and delightful. It's like, oh, it's just an old skin bag. I think it's me. Contemplating sensation as eating bowls. We'll come back to that. Eating bowls and the rounds that monks used to do, and nuns too, I'm not sure, where you took what was ever offered into your bowl. Those rounds are still done today. Contemplating mind as fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles. This is a Dogen thing. Is that, of course, mind is everything. Hence, it's the things of the world. We'll go back to this. And contemplating phenomena as old man Zhang drinking wine, old man Lin getting drunk. What is the interconnection between if one person drinks wine, it affects the other person next to them, which is, of course, happening all the time. If you're intoxicated with some mind state, you think that's not going to potentially intoxicate the person next to you? Excuse me, pay attention to politics. What do you think is happening here? It's an intoxication. One of the precepts is not to intoxicate self with substances or doctrines. Pay attention. Dogen's particular view of mindfulness is based on non-duality of subject and object. In other words, there is nothing of which one is mindful and no one maintaining something called mindfulness. While he doesn't take issue with the Buddha regarding the early teachings about mindfulness, Dogen goes beyond the usual conclusion about these elements to see the phenomenal of world exactly as it is. So we're not adding something on top of it. I'm going to confess my own little judgmental mind, I do have one, is in the beginning when I saw people doing mindfulness, I couldn't figure out, they look, I'm sorry, sometimes it looked like zombies. I mean, there's a beautiful practice of deep concentration, but it didn't look, to my body, it didn't look awake in the world. It looked like there was so much concentration on something particular, which is a very beautiful and deep concentration practice. I mean, please do it. But the way Dogen describes it is mindfulness is being awake in the awareness of everything. So concentration is presence in this moment, which is to be deeply alive. While Dogen's teachings, like that of the Buddha, aims to help us loosen the grip of craving and aversion, It is designed not to discourage engagement from the world, but to allow for full immersion in the world and for the understanding that all things are interconnected. Thus, Dogen's foundation for mindfulness are very much about experience of the world and maintaining awareness of non-separation right in the midst of daily encounters, keeping everything in context. They are about remembering reality. So maybe I should try to unpack a little of what I just said. As I understand it in Vipassana communities, and I think it's a really helpful practice, is like when anger arises, with mindfulness, you just name anger arising. And you name sensations in the body of aversion arising, pain in the knee arising. And I think that's really, really helpful. It's like our breath practice. And you can move back and forth. You can do loving kindness as a concentration practice. You can take anything to help this mind just come home. It's like, just be here. Just come back. Come back. But what happens that is more than the sum of the parts is as you do that, as we do that, instead of, it's like Suzuki Roshi when he talks about counting. We don't talk about that so much in Zazen. Is counting can be a beautiful mindfulness concentration practice. Is your mind squirrely, you just breathe in one. Well, actually you breathe in one, all the way in the exhale. Breathe in, 2, all the way on the exhale. And you go through to 10, and then you start again at 1. Of course, if you're paying attention and if you're in a distracted state of mind or not, you will find that you very rarely will get to 10. And that in itself is information, and then you just come back to 1. And then things begin to settle down and open, and sometimes you can just sit down and you just basically do shikantaza, just sitting, which is you just sit down, you follow the breath. Something, you know this Zazen body. But those kinds of concentration practices are really, really helpful. But don't miss the big view of what the fundamental teaching from Mahayana and Dogen's point of view is, which is always, always, always to cultivate insight into a separate self and to be able to loosen the engagement and the entanglement with it, and to more and more have a sense of a body that is this body which I can pay attention to in the moment, forms, feelings, sensations, likes, this isn't about dissociation. You're intimately awake in the midst of it, feeling it all the way through, which is all the way through means you're studying the self and waking up to realizing the karma of this particular self, the conditioning of this particular self, but really realizing this is what all human beings, this is what it is to be a human being. We feel in dualities. We're all conditioned in one way or another. Things trigger us. We like it, we don't like it, we push it, we do this thing. But more and more you find stability in this open space. So then we can feel things, but we can not get so pushed around. And reactivity then, which is wanting, not wanting, that gets us into so much trouble and so much entanglement with ourselves and with others, is more and more you just catch it quicker. You don't go down that road so fast. Like, just take a breath. Okay. Dogen's foundations for mindfulness are very much about experience of the world and maintaining awareness of non-separation right in the midst of daily encounters, keeping everything in context. They are about remembering reality, what is true. Reality being that this world that we see through twos is a function of our sense organs, of our of the way we are wired as human beings. But the truth of it is that everything is deeply and intimately flowing in and out of everything else. And if we want to be bodhisattvas, to wake up to our bodhisattva nature, to wake up to our true nature, the more that we can wake up to and come back to that flow, the more, instead of me staying with some projection, I'm going to be able to take a breath and say, oh, what's really happening here? And who do I think you are? And who do I think I am? And how do we meet each other? And what's possible in the next moment? So it becomes very alive. It's all about meeting and relationship, actually, is Mahayana, as I would have it come forward. Let's see here. I knew there was going to be a lot of stuff that I wasn't going to be able to say. Okay, maybe I'll focus on Mahayana a little bit more. The rise of Mahayana Buddhism at the beginning of the Common Era shifted the focus of Buddhist practice and introduced the Bodhisattva ideal. Now, I just want to say, I think the Bodhisattva ideal was always there. I've been to Theravadan countries, and they have Bodhisattvas there. I think that's a false division that we've done, but the emphasis became less on self-improvement and getting out of this world, which was defined as nirvana, because this world was just a cesspool of suffering, samsara. Bodhisattvas just want to keep coming back and being here, so they can wake up with and for all beings. So it comes from the view of, in this interconnected self, how could I get out of here and leave you here, or you get out, because my happiness and your happiness is completely interconnected. So it's like each moment I'll just come back. And we study all the ways that we practice trying to get out of here. We're conditioned to try to get out of here. Rather than transcending the phenomenal world, the practitioner's goal became to live an awakened life in the world by seeing through delusion to how things really are. According to the Mahayana tradition, seeing the emptiness of all things, hence the Heart Sutra, is itself awakening, because the world is a manifestation of cosmic reality. It's the difference between seeing the emptiness of the phenomenal world and using dissociation from it to wake up, versus awakening by seeing emptiness and becoming one with the source of that phenomenal world. It says, which I'll bring it forward because it was one of the teachings I think last week, is early Buddhism arose in India. And India has a particular kind of, I just think karmically, it's like we in the West have a certain conditioning about how we see and view things. Early Pali teachings, I think, is very much rooted and came out of the Indian psyche. And then it moved to China. And China very much has another, I'm talking in generalities and I don't know anything, but these are helpful things to maybe, because I think part of it's helpful because it seems like people are saying we're on the verge of war with China. So what do we think China is? I think that if you look at the early teachings in China, they're profound. That's some places in there in that culture, just as in our Christian culture. There's really deep teachings about love, So how do we keep seeing beyond what we want to set ourselves up against? And the teaching last week, I think, was in China. It became a day without work is a day without food, I think. So it became very earthbound, physical, be in the body. That wanting to live, the Chinese people wanted to live in the midst of that interdependent web to gain insight into their own Buddha nature. So let's keep asking, who do we think we're going to war with? Which is not to be stupid that there's lots of confusion everywhere, and how are we going to go forward? I don't know. Okay. What is mind really? For some people who are in the everyday Zen practice period that's happening right now, there's a study of the Surangama Sutra, which is Chinese origin. And the question of what is mind? Now, it's not psychological mind. That's what we think as Westerners. When you say mind, you think psychological mind, and you think this is me mind, and that's what we do in therapy. I mean, please, study your conditioned mind. But when we talk about mind in the sense of samadhi and concentration, we're talking about, I think it's in China, it's called heart mind, which is awareness, which is awareness of awake. If mind is everything we encounter, then right mindfulness is understanding there is no gap between ourselves and the rest of this one unified reality that transcends time and space. Zazen is where we get a taste of this. So it's not just like, oh, we're all one in time and space. But in Zazen, especially if you do longer retreats, and when you sit over long periods of time, you really do begin to taste that there is something, a Zazen body, a Zazen mind, that is the mind that is everything and includes everything. It's not intellectual. It's physical, but it's beyond physical. Maybe we could say it's energetic, but it feels like anytime you try to name it, you're going to miss it. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes because I want to go over Dogen's quickly. Dogen's 4 foundations. Contemplating the body as a skin bag. Dogen sees the body as the ground of awakening and thus indispensable. Without the body, there would be no practice, no teaching, no mindfulness. Be grateful you have a body, which also then includes sickness, aging, and death. How else are we going to learn about impermanence up close? Contemplating sensation as eating bowls. Tenzo Kyokan, Erica did a really nice teaching on the Tenzo Kyokan at the Aravaipa Sesshin. Well, she did a nice talk, but she also lived it for the whole Sesshin by being Tenzo. If we contemplate sensations, whatever arises in the body, as well, I should follow through on the Tenzo Kyokan. Dogen recalls the old monk in the Tenzo Kyokan saying, "A monk's mouth is like an oven. Just as an oven does not resist or complain whether we put in cake, potatoes, or dog biscuits, a monk accepts whatever is put in their bowls during alms rounds." It's like, oh, here it is. I mean, there is this feeling of open-handed generosity, of just receiving. So that's receiving whatever arises in this body with that same feeling. It's wonderful. Dogen suggests sensations are not ours, but neither are they outside somewhere, separate from us. Practicing with the body means practicing with the feeling that arises when senses come in contact with sense objects. When eyes, ears, nose, tongue, but come in contact with something out there and grab onto it and fixate on it or aversion to it, and then we start getting entangled in it through all of our ancient twisted karma conditioning, and then we start thinking it's me and you and what did you do and all the thing that goes on and on. We can simply remain aware of things as they arise without obsessing or fixating on them, and without analyzing them to invest them with special meaning. Obsession and analysis simply narrows a field of vision. So just open-handed. Open-handed. Watching it come and go. Contemplating mind as fence, walls, tiles, and pebbles. Dogen uses one of his favorite metaphors, he uses this a lot if you read Dogen, for the world of form to show that mind is impermanent. Everything is impermanent. Mind and Dharma are not separate. Our challenge is not to forget that everything we encounter is one mind. Walls, tiles, pebbles are impermanent by nature, just as mind is impermanent by nature. Mind is not somewhere else. It's right here among the forms that make up our daily existence. It is everything. It's why in Zen there's such a strong and beautiful teaching of just take care of what's in front of you. It's like take care of the zendo. Ring the bell. Cut the carrots. There's nothing separate. Whatever you're doing, wash the dishes like it's the whole world. Coffee cups, smartphones, and running shoes are all mine, which means they're all impermanent, which means all interbeing, codependent, interdependent arising. You can't, where does one thing begin and end? Like Thich Nhat Hanh does that the best in a certain way, is you look at a piece of paper and so you see the cloud and you see the rain and you see the logger and you see the tree and you see the paper mill, and it's like how can you really, when you look deeply, tease any of it apart? So sometimes you do it with mind, and sometimes you're sitting like on a spring day, like the shadows that on the ground here, just overwhelmed with the wonder of all of it and how much we make it small. It's like, oh, that's just over there. And yeah, it's like, oh my goodness. Look at the camellias on the altar. Where? You tell me that camellia, I mean, that camellia is the whole world. Just take one flower and contemplate it. And then contemplating phenomena as old man Zhang drinking wine, old man Li getting drunk. Interdependent. Dogen's quote that comes from Yunmen's recording sayings, he's using it here to show the interconnectedness of all beings, and that this interconnectedness is beyond perceptions and workings of the intellect. How does it happen that when one person drinks sake, another feels the effects? How does it happen that when we carry the Dharma into the world without any intention of influencing others to practice, or I'd say just some kindness, some simple kindness, and then you hear years later or the next day, or somebody just says, that really moved me and touched me and helped me in my day. Same way as if we step on somebody's toes, or somebody steps on my toes, it can affect my whole day. I mean, if I let it. Everything is arising and passing away together in a vast, interconnected system of causes and conditions. Oh my goodness, this is such a great chapter. Sorry. Okay, let me finish up here, and then we'll have a little bit of time to talk. Dogen's mindfulness is one in which there is simply full engagement with the moment. That's it. Simply full engagement in the moment. There is no outside part of ourselves watching what we are doing with some intention or strategy or agenda. There's no idea of being morally wrong or right, because right mindfulness transcends all of this. Out of mindfulness, complete non-separation with all dharmas, with all things, wholesomeness naturally arises without the need for thinking about it. The mind that abides nowhere can abide everywhere, not fixed on any one thing, but taking in the whole interconnected system that is the universe. It's not intellectual, discriminating, psychological mind, but the functioning of the vast interconnected network of impermanent elements that make up a complete reality. And when we remember this, because we will forget, if you don't know you're self-centered, but notice it with compassion and kindness. It's like, whoa, there it is again. But we can step back and take refuge in the precepts and the teachings and zazen and wake up and wake up and wake up. And we renew our aspiration and intention, and we remember our true place in that reality. That's why it's called continuous practice. Forever. I think that's really good news. You're never going to get bored. You'll always have something to do, except it's kind of non-doing. It's just not what you thought it was. But then the more you do it, nothing is like what you thought it was. But you still have to do something. And that's why it's so wonderful to have Sangha and the teachings and each other, because we help each other remember. Okay, so maybe I'm going to put you in small groups.